Hi there. If you can hear us, please let us know where you're hearing us from. If you're watching a recording, welcome to Noble Warrior. My name is CK Lin. Noble Warriors will interview heart-centered entrepreneurs about their spiritual disciplines. We'll deconstruct their mindset, mental models, and actionable tactics so you can go out and take them and engineer your life with more impact and fulfillment. Of course, if you have any entrepreneur friends who could use more inspiration and more permission to be who they really are, go ahead and share this episode with them. They will thank you for it. Now, my next guest is Barry Goldstein. He is a Grammy Award winning producer whose passion is to use music to transform lives. He has collaborated with New York Times bestsellers, authors, Neale Donald Walsch, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Daniel Amen, and he's also an author himself, The Secret Language of the Heart, How to Use Music, Sound, and Vibration as a tool for healing and personal transformation. Now, Barry's music is being used in hospitals, hospices, cancer centers, medical practices to help stroke victims who struggle with also Alzheimer's disease, people with aphasia, people with ADD, and many, many other ailments. I'm really excited to have him on today. Now, he has a special announcement. Next week, he is collaborating with Dr. Amen to release this album called Your Brain is Always Listening. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, go to barrygoldsteinmusic.com. Okay. Really excited to have you here today, Barry. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, CK. Looking forward to a fun and enlightening conversation with you.
Enlightening is the word. So I know that you shared this story many times, but maybe you can share a minute version of that. How did you discover the healing aspect of music, going from rock and roll to healing? It's kind of a drastic thing, right? How did you discover that?
Yeah, I mean, it was really from my own healing and my working with my own anxiety, sleeping challenges, stress of being a type A, very busy record producer, taking 50 to 100 hours producing a song. And I knew that things needed to shift and I wanted to reconnect with music on a different level. So I did some research of how I can move myself to a more relaxed state. And what I found, CK, was that music that is composed between 60 and 70 beats per minute targets our heart at a relaxed state. So I started to compose music at that tempo and really just for my own purposes initially. But as I shared that music with people, we started getting testimonials of all the amazing ways people were using it. And that really intrigued me to research the whys and hows that was happening. And that really spurred me writing my book and utilizing music in the way that we're talking about today.
Right. So discuss a little bit about your philosophy of this internal symphony, the heartbeat, the breath, and how that brings a unique sound form, who we really are as an individual. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, most of us think of music as something that happens to us, so something that happens outside of ourselves. But the awareness that I like to connect with is that music is something that happens in us. So when we hear a piece of music that we like, or it resonates with us, something's going on in our physical body that is connecting with that music. And our heartbeat, our breath, our internal symphony that is always going on in our physical body. So it's telling us that we're alive, we're well, and in this moment we have a lot that we can be appreciative of. And that music that's within us connects with that external music. And so this is what we call entrainment. When an internal rhythm synchronizes with an external rhythm. So in this case, the internal rhythm, is our heart. Our heart is our internal metronome that our heart rate's beating. It entrains or synchronizes with music. And that's how we can target specific states that we would like to move to, not just mentally, but also physically.
Interesting. So since you brought up the internal rhythm and the external rhythm, so does that mean, I'm just following your logic here, right? Does that mean let's say the outside is going crazy, I should synchronize myself to that, or do it the other way around, calm myself down as a way to bring the external to the internal.
Yeah, I mean, that happens naturally. We don't have to like create an intention to want to synchronize, with that. But yeah, I mean, emotions are energy, and they as well have a vibration or an aspect to them, and we're constantly emotionally in training to other people's energy, and that's really the point, and when you bring that awareness in, that can happen on both levels. That can happen in a positive way, and I'm sure you felt that, when somebody walks in a room in a party, or you walk into a room and you look at that person, say, wow, they seem really cool. Something about their energy I'm really resonating with. And the other way around as well, then you can have that same interaction at that party, and it could be, wow, something about that guy just, or girl rubbed me the wrong way.
I've been both.
Yeah.
The cool guy and the anxious guy, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it can happen, and this happens in our day all the time. We're constantly meeting people and interacting with people who we resonate with, and we don't resonate with, we entrain with, and we don't. So when you bring that awareness in, when it's a negative energy, you can start to say, wow, I don't think I'm going to hang out with that person that much. You can use your energy, and budget it. Or if you have a conversation with that same person every week, and you're like, you know what, every time I get off the phone with that person, I feel drained. And so once you bring that awareness in, you can dictate how you want to spend that energy, and maybe not talking to that person every week. And the other way around, when you resonate with a person who inspires you and actually notches up your energy, where you feel, wow, I just love talking to that person, I wish I could talk to them every day. Same thing. Maybe you want to have more conversations with that person. But where the exciting part comes in is...
What's the word? Assigning?
I'm sorry?
What was that word that you used with the
Yeah,
assigning?
the exciting.
Exciting, I see.
Exciting, yeah. Part comes in is that when we have this awareness, we can utilize music as a tool for energetic management. So giving you the same example, of that person that you have a conversation with, and you get off the phone and you feel emotionally drained, as opposed to letting your day continue that way, because sometimes that happens. One event can turn your day into a negative or a positive. If you could bring that awareness in, that, wow, that wasn't a great conversation, I don't feel great for it, I feel like I'm in a contracted state as opposed to an expansive state. How can I shift this? And what would happen if you utilize music as a bridge, and you actually ask yourself, okay, well, where am I right now after this conversation? What emotion am I in? Maybe you're now in a state of anxiety. And then you ask yourself, okay, well, I'm a little bit anxious now. Where do I want to go? Well, I want to go to a more relaxed, peaceful state, or I want to go to a more inspired state. And then you ask yourself, once you identify the emotion you want to go to, what piece of music will take me there? And, that's where it really starts to get powerful, of how music can be used to change your energy, and you get to navigate it. It's what I call becoming the DJ of your life. You can literally program your day with music to counteract situations where your emotions are spent negatively, and you can actually enhance it even more by something positive happening in your day. That person that you talk to, and you're like, wow, I feel great after that conversation. Okay, so I'm inspired. Where do I want to go? I want to become even more inspired. So maybe you put on a piece of bumping club music, or, your workout music, and now you take it up even another level. And before you know it, now you're calling someone who, you've been thinking about calling for a podcast, and they say yes. or it's a new creative endeavor that you're, wow, I'm going to start that right now. And literally, you can change and reprogram your life just with a few tweaks to how you're utilizing music.
I love that. So I love that phrase or the metaphor, becoming the DJ of your life. So let's following that trajectory a bit. Okay. So a good DJ, when they transition from song to song, it's very smooth. You barely notice it, right? And not
Right.
a good DJ, an amateur DJ would be, oh, everyone is not hearing it. Let me turn up the bass, boom, like that. And, like, whoa, it's all of a sudden it's a weird, very jarring experience. So do you have any specific suggestions about how they can transition, like the next step of the emotions of where they want to go? Maybe they want to feel joy, but right now they're freaking depressed, right? So do they just go straight to joy and then club music bumping, or is there a transitory period that you would recommend?
Yeah, well, I would say starting off simple. So the simplest, and I like that you use the example of joy, because I always say, if you just want to start your music program with, if it had to be one song that you chose, I would say pick your happy song. So this is what I call your musical pinnacle, right? This is a song that you can identify that has created what's called an autobiographical memory. So every time you hear that song, you can't help but be happy. So for me, my happy song, my main one is the Jackson 5. I don't know if you remember them. It was before Michael Jackson had a solo career. And it was a song called The Love You Save. Very, very high energy, very just exhilarating, relentless beat and rhythm, great vocals. And so even thinking about that song brings me to that state. And studies have shown that even if we're thinking about a song that we enjoy, that we are basically having the same benefits as listening to that song itself. So that's how strong the connection is to music, that even thinking about that song can start inducing beneficial hormones in our bodies, such as dopamine. It could also start curtailing one of our stress hormones, cortisol. And this is all shown through research, and some of which, is included in my book, The Secret Language of the Heart. But so identifying that one song. So, and I'm sure as I'm talking about this, CK, you're probably thinking, oh, well, what's my happy song? So what's your happy song? Can you identify it?
Well, actually, I don't know. I'm kind of like, yeah, I think, what was that word with Pharrell? Happy song. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the happiest, the peak experience, the pinnacle.
Yeah.
But that song comes to mind.
Yeah. And that, and the song's called Happy. I mean, how many people is that song is now like their happy song?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great one for me too. And I listen to it because Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I work with, plays at a lot of his retreats, and just the energy that is filled in that room, again, creates this amazing new autobiographical memory. So that's the key thing is, you can have a new happy song that someone recommends to you, and all of a sudden now you can use that to program and create a new happy memory with that one song. So that's a great way to start your program, just with that one song, that one go-to, for people who are experiencing depression or anxiety, at least to have one song to start with that takes them to another mood. And then going from there, you can start to program different times of your day.
Well, before you go there, I would definitely ask about the different time of day and then different rhythms and so forth. What I'm hearing you say is have a go-to song that basically anchor the biographical memories. That's the base, right? So you can always go back to the nostalgia, the memory, the feeling of elation and joy and gratitude and so forth. So, but the more nuanced question that I have is, do you just flip on the switch? I'm depressed. Let me play my joy song. Or is there a transitory, gradation to slowly move the emotion from a low place to a neutral, then to a high place?
That's a great question. So I think that also, so if you now we're talking about multiple songs and we start to kind of get into playlists. So that becomes your happy song, right? That you can start with. And then if you're feeling, it's all by kind of like trial and error, just as DJs kind of test the crowd to see what they react to.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see how you're reacting to things. And that's where you become your own sound healer and say, hey, it worked on this day for 3 days, but today I feel like I do need a song to transition. So that kind of opens up more awareness for you. And then you can start taking inventory of your music. Like, I'm sure most people don't do this, but I do, is that if I want to create a playlist for feelings that, make me feel happy or in a space of gratitude, the first thing I do is I take inventory of my songs, all the songs that I have that are in my music library, and say, oh, wow, this one would be really great for that playlist. Like Sly and the Family Stone, Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself, or there's an artist, Karen Drucker, has a song, Thank You for This Day's Spirit. There's a new piece on the album I'm doing with Daniel Amen called Thankful. So, having 3 or 4 songs now, and if I set those up and say, how does this feel going from one to another, just like a DJ would, we can then see, oh, this might be good to kind of bridge those, starting with a more peaceful song. Then maybe I go to Dido. Then maybe I go to Sly and the Family Stone. And then maybe I go to Happy after that. And now I have a 4-song playlist. And DJs do that all the time, don't they? I mean, when you go to a wedding, they've already kind of mapped out where they want to take you energetically. So, you walk in, and ultimately there's a theme, right, for the wedding. They want everyone to feel good. They want everyone to have a great time. They want everyone to be emotionally connected to it. But they're not starting off with, Let's Celebrate by Kool and the Gang when you walk into the cocktail hour, right? There's gentle acoustic music kind of welcoming you in, creating safety. It's played at a low volume so people can chat, right? And then as you go into the next level where you're going into the ballroom, maybe they have a saxophone player that is adding a little bit of energy to that acoustic guitar player. Then the father and the bride are dancing together, and they're creating this, real heart-opening experience. And so what they're doing is creating a comfort level, right? They're getting everyone to connect first by talking, then bringing the energy up, and then everyone has a common emotion that they shared when they saw the bride and the father dancing together. And then after dinner, now they're amping that energy up to just move into that happy, state that is geared towards kind of like the encore, of going to a concert. You don't start with your encore.
As you're speaking, I realize there is a new genre that I'm looking for, but I haven't found yet as you're speaking. Because
Okay.
I'm a lifelong learner, a lifelong student. And I'm telling you for real, one of my intention these days is, how do I go deeper? How do I go deeper? And then how do I go deeper with music? And music is a great tool, right? Because it immerses you with that emotionality, right? The nostalgia, the memories, and so on and so on. So I would love it if there's someone who can describe the different pieces of music as they're creating it. Like, hey, I'm about to take you to the emotional state. Let me pick this music. Here's why I do it. So kind of like a masterclass of how to create a journey, right? How do you take you through the emotional journey? I haven't come across it. If there is anyone, if you or whoever, like that would be like the best thing. That's what I'm
Yeah.
looking for.
And I think that's it's a great point. It's not only a genre, but maybe a new platform where, artists are actually giving you the behind the scenes, intentions of why and how they created the music. Because, we used to have, albums and CDs, right? When you bought an album or a CD, there were liner notes that talked about a lot of that, right? And you'd open the album up and you'd get to read about what inspired the artist, and you'd see pictures of them in the recording studio and, all of the above. But nowadays, all you're seeing on an album is a front cover, and
Mm.
you're really not getting much more information. So it's interesting you say that. I just had an interview. I did a podcast earlier today with Daniel Amen because of this release that we're creating. And he asked me that, he said, okay, well, why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about each of the pieces and what your intention was in creating that piece. And, one of the pieces is called New Day. And, I shared with him that in creating that piece of music, it was my intention that when the person listening to it experienced it, that it could bring in the energy that every day is a fresh slate. That no day is like the other day, that with their new beginnings, and that we have the ability to recreate ourselves every day. So how is that captured musically and sonically? And as a musician, I did a lot of that symbolically, where the piece opens up with some gentle wind chimes, like in the morning, like you can hear it, like you're sleeping and you could gently hear a breeze coming in. And then all of a sudden you hear these beautiful guitar harmonics that feel like the sun rays are kind of coming in. And this was, all in my head. This is all what I'm putting into the music. And then there's a beautiful sweeping cymbal that kind of opens the piece up into a little bit more gentle rhythm, like you're waking up, and you're stepping into the day, and you can feel this positive energy, by the chord progression of using, major chords and combining it with specific tempos and patterns that give the listener a chance to kind of get into more of a trance state with it. And so, those are the things that you don't always hear about the music, but it's our job as composers to get the listener there. And it was interesting when I was composing this piece, my wife came into this room, to my studio, and she said, wow, I don't know what it is about this piece, but I'm just going to sit down and listen to it for a minute. And I didn't tell her what the piece was about, what it was going to be called. And after the piece was over, she said, wow, I just had a really powerful experience. That, that piece brought me into a state of, of a rebirthing and a newness. And I was like, wow, that's really awesome, because this song is called New Day. And it's about new beginnings. It's about that rebirth every day. And so in that moment, it's exactly what we talked about before, CK, where now she has a strong emotional connection to this one song. And this song can create new autobiographical memories for her, that when she experiences it and she hears it again, she is brought back to that moment where she felt guided to come into the room, and she really kind of needed that musical refreshment, that musical nourishment. She came in one way, she sat down, and before the song was over, she had moved into a higher, elevated emotional state. So that's key for me. And what I do is, like, I want every piece of music to be transformational, not just like, oh, I really like that song, but I want the person to be in a better state from listening to it than they were before they listened to it.
I'm so eager to respond. I'm a transformational experience architect, right? So
I love that.
while I'm really well versed with the words, maybe with mindset, I don't have the musical skills. I can appreciate it, but I don't know how to make it, right? I don't know how to design the journey to take people there. So I'm telling you, there's something here, Barry. And I think maybe you or someone like you could bring this to reality. There are tons of, so for example, I'll give you a concrete example. I was listening to the playlist that maps, organization that, helps people basically certify psychedelic experience and so on and so on. So they curated a playlist for their musical experience. But it's so, I hate to say this way, but it's so powerless. So it's lacking potency because they have to make it generic, right, for everyone. But it just is, this doesn't have the punch. So, and there are tons of other people who are trying to create this musical journey or musical experience. And I think there is a possibility, a masterclass for other producers, musicians, who's looking to create powerful musical journeys, because musical journeys is very connected with the heart, the mind, and the spirit. So I think there's something here.
Yeah, I love that. And I think similar to the journey that they're taking you through from, from the not music side of it, but the hallucinogenic side of it, that is similar because every person has a unique experience that is going to be completely different when they are inducing that, right? I mean, you're not going to have the same experience as the person next to you. So why would it be any different from the musical aspect of it? I mean, you wouldn't create a generic description of the experience that everyone's going to have and say, this is what's going to happen. So why would you want to map the same experience for people musically? So, and that's a great next point for us, CK, because the power becomes in not someone just recommending it for you. The power comes in you being able to identify what is powerful for you.
Right. Personalized.
Yeah. It's like personalized medicine,
Mm-hmm.
So I can, or personalized nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
I can say, CK, there are some amazing new studies on broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
And it's showing that it's really helping fight cancer. It's really helping in terms of your antioxidants, whatever it may be. But if you do a test and find out that you're allergic to broccoli, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because it's going to be creating inflammation in you. It's not going to be healthy for you at all. So I can say, CK, I think this piece of music is going to be great for you. But when you listen to it, like you said, that music had no charge for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the key in the masterclass is not picking the music itself. It's about learning what takes you to contracted and expansive states.
It's the metacognition aspect of it.
Right. It's that, so it's like what Christ said about, teaching a man to fish. He said, I can give a man a fish and he'll have enough to eat for a day. Right. And excuse me if I'm not getting it exact, but if I teach a man to fish, he can eat for a lifetime. Right. So it's the same thing. I can give you a piece of music and you might find that piece relaxing, but if I can teach you, or inspiring, but if I could teach you how a piece of music makes you feel more expansive, what does the feeling of expansiveness feel like for you? So when I feel expansive, I feel my heart swelling, right? I have this kind of feeling of energy. Sometimes I get goosebumps. Sometimes I have a lightness that happens to me, or I feel it feels like the top of my head is like has a very large opening and I'm connecting to an unlimited field of possibilities. And so these are signs for me that I'm having a powerful experience. This is my body saying, wow, this is an expansive experience for you, whether it's through music or reading a book or anything. So if I go through my library.
Pause for a moment.
Yeah.
Pause for a moment. So Do you then make a note of that voice note, type it down as you're experiencing this? The reason I asked this very specific question is this: if I just go in the moment, then I'll forget. Like, oh, that was pretty
Yeah.
good, but in reality, it was more than effing good. If I don't actually write it down, right? So I'm curious to know, how do you make note of how your
Yeah.
body actually responds in
I
the
think
moment?
making note of it's a great idea, and why not journal it and say, wow, I listened to this song on this day and this is how it made me feel. Because I would say most likely when you even go back and read that the next day, even if you read it without the music, that it would bring in some of those feelings again, because your words are connected to the experience of it. And it was very powerful for you. So words have a vibration to them as well. And what you were feeling can be communicated from the language of music to the language of words. Now you're creating a multi-sensory experience with it, not just the music in itself, but how you were feeling emotionally, mentally from it, and even spiritually from it, not just the physical aspects of it. So yeah, and take it in small steps. Like, what would happen if if you typed in on YouTube, music to inspire, and you came across 5 videos that had the top hits on them, and you listened to each one, and even if you found one piece that you felt, wow, I really had an expansive experience with that, and you wrote down what it is. If you did that once a day, for a week, at the end of the week, you'd have 7 songs that now have created that expansive state. So do you think that you would have a more concrete way to measure that experience and what that feels like in your physical body now? Do you think that would be a possibility? So after a week and writing it down and finding 7 songs, do you think you'd now be able to say, okay, wow, so I find some common denominators that make me feel expansive in that? So that's the question to ask yourself. And then as you define that, you just keep expanding that and creating your playlists, and tapping them in to specific times in your day, even when you think you might need that. So the just like the DJ, and circling back to your original question, which, while an experienced DJ, everything's nice and smooth and easy, right? But an inexperienced DJ could be them turning up the bass here and there. Well, no experienced DJ got to be an experienced DJ without screwing up a couple of mixes,
Mm,
and without their audience hearing that. I'm sure
mm.
they can remember the first time, man, I should not have mixed that record with that one. I just felt the energy of the crowd go like this, right? So you're an experiment, so becoming the DJ of your life is experimental. And
Mm.
then, once you start getting it and saying, wow, that was really cool. I use music 3 times in my day to turn around my energy and navigate it where I wanted it to go. And then you can start even looking at your day like, oh, what do I have going on tomorrow? Wow, I have a high energy interview in the morning, with Dave Asprey. I don't want to be like, in
Meditative. Yeah.
low relax. I want to have high energy, man. I want to be connected, because his
So
energy
actually,
is
so let me ask you a quick question. So let's use that very example.
okay.
Do you amp up your energy to meet them where they're at, or a little higher or a little lower? Do you have, or is it more of just for yourself? Like, hey, I want to feel good when I'm ready to meet with Dave Asprey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's a combination, and I think it's a combination. I think that it's like collaboration. What is collaboration and what is synergy? Right? So I have my vibration and you have your vibration. But when we come together, the definition of synergy of that is that what we have created now together, whether it's in an interview or a collaboration for a piece of music, is more powerful than either one of us could have created together. So that's the key is I want to bring my energy in. I want to bring my heartfulness in and who I am. And I want him to feel that, but I also want to tap into his gifts and what he does great. And what's going to happen is we're going to create a new, unique third vibration that is like Dave Goldstein or Barry Asprey, right? That is my audience, his audience, and they get what we're both saying. They get the best of both worlds, and they get something they wouldn't have got from listening to me. They wouldn't have got from listening to him individually. And, that is, beautiful, right? It's harmony. That's how we create harmony is hitting that note. And it's not the exact same note, but it's a beautiful complement to it.
So let's drill in on that harmony point. I really love that the way you articulated harmony and disharmony, right?
Okay.
When two people come together.
I have my keyboard up here too, so I can give you an example of that, in real time. All right, so it's taking a minute here to wake up.
Sure, of course. I love live demos. Every time I have a musician on and then they do their thing, I'm just always thankful. So I'm so excited.
This is really, simple. So you're hearing that note, right? And so that is, I'm hitting an A on that. And if I hit another A with it, right, that is a unison. So it's hitting the same note, but it's hitting it an octave up. So you don't hear it as much as you would as if I hit a harmony, right? So this is that same A. And now I'm hitting a harmony with it, which is a fifth, that's an E. So when I hit them together, they blend very beautifully together, and they're not the same notes, but they're complementary to each other. So that's how we experience harmony. But if I were to hit, that's dissonance. And we can learn, the difference between feeling harmony. Does that feel more expansive to you than?
Yeah.
Right. And that moves kind of into a contracted state. It's not very complementary, but sometimes, dissonance has a role as well. And it helps us move energy, of things that are stuck,
yes.
In there. And if you think of that, like in a horror movie, right? Something's coming up when you hear that, right? Right? That tension is what we're talking about, is contractedness. And that something's about to occur. So they're using that, that dissonance for a specific purpose to make you feel a certain way.
Yeah, I was listening to, I want to bring back to the human harmony part. I want to make a note about the dissonance. Let's see. Let me make a creative choice here. Okay, I want to let's finish the loop around the harmony in the human beings first. So let's say you're meeting with the Asprey, you're actively, intentionally creating, this harmony between the two of you. How do you go into that with the music list that you have? Does that make sense? Like, can you expand on that a little bit more? How do you basically prepare your mental space after you play your music, or when you play music, such that you're ready to create a harmony wherever Dave is at energetically?
Yeah, well, I would think about how I want to feel within that interview. So I would, this is the big questions that I ask myself are always, where am I now? Where do I want to go? And what piece of music is going to take me there? So if I'm feeling that morning that I felt a little challenged, and I had a situation that happened an hour before, and I'm feeling anxious or anxiety, I'm going to probably use a 3 or 4 song set to kind of meet me where I'm at first, or listen to some calming music that is going to bring me back into my heart first and allow me to move some of that energy. And, like I have a series called Ambiology.
Mm-hmm.
For that, there's one called Ambiology, the Heart,
Mm-hmm.
that is great for anxiety. Another one I use called the Heart Codes. And when I listen to those pieces, they just really just bring me into a place where I'm more loving towards myself, and that's the key, is meeting myself where I'm at, reconnecting with my own vibration, because whatever happened in that situation that, took me out of my space, I could still come back to me. That wasn't me. That was just something that triggered a negative aspect of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I would first create a piece of music to feel myself again, be more gentle with myself, and then maybe a piece to transition that, get a little movement in there, some rhythms in there. That always does it for me, like percussion and, movement and bass helps me now feel more connected and safe and nurtured. Because as we connect to those lower energies, we connect to the energy of the earth. And it helps us to feel more grounded. So that's why a lot of people love listening to bass, or kicks or 808s and all that low frequency music, is they feel more grounded. They can feel themselves in their physical body because they can feel that bass in their body. And then, I would pick a piece of music that inspires me, because Dave Asprey inspires me. He's done so many great things to bring awareness into what we can do to live longer, to create better health. So I want to get in that mind frame where I'm feeling that way. And so I would take a piece of music that ignites me. Like I have a CD, I think I actually shared some of this music with you, called Ignite the Heart. And I have a piece on there called Inferno. That is really, it's just kind of like it lights you up, it's big drums and a lot of energy. And sometimes that fire energy is the energy and the element of movement, where we want to connect and get something ablaze and something really going. So, that's off the top of my head, what I would go with based on your question. And that might change the next day. Based on where my energy was at to start with. So you're absolutely right. It's meeting yourself where you're at first. Find that spot, that sweet spot where, wow, that matches my energy now. And then
let me do a quick recap. So what you're saying is meet yourself first, and then take yourself through a journey, move yourself through the different spaces, and ultimately arrive at whoever you think the other person's energetic place is at. So that way, you didn't say this, but I'm projecting, let me know if I'm wrong. That way you have range as well.
Yeah, and the only thing I would tweak it with that is not necessarily getting to that person's energetic state or their vibration, but getting to a point where it feels like your energy and your authentic you, right, will harmonize with their energy. And I think that's more accurate, because you don't want to just, I want to become the energy of this person and emulate them per se, because that wouldn't feel authentic to it. But if you can get to a point where, wow, now my energy feels like this is going to be a great back and forth. Like we have a great back and forth energy going right now. And that's where you want to get. So it's synergistic.
I love that. Thank you for underlining that point. You're right. It's not about being more than what you actually are, right? Projecting yourself to be that person. Actually, just be within your own range, whatever that is, such that you can collaborate and synergize and harmonize with the other person. Love that. I want to make a point real quick about what you said. I love that you listen to your own music to get back to center. That's awesome. Every time I hear some like actual musician or maker who actually enjoy, I'm a podcaster, I listen to my own podcast. Like, man, this is good stuff. Like, so I love that you said that.
Yeah. And CK, I'll tell you the truth. In 19, I think it was like 97, somewhere in that area. I had an amazingly powerful experience. And actually, it happened in a dream. And I don't share this story a lot, but I'll share it with you because it really is distinguishing of like listening, how I view listening to my own music. But in that dream, I literally was given a song, of many verses of a song, and the melody and all of it were in this song. And I woke up and I wrote the words down on a piece of paper, and literally, so I would remember everything about it, but the melody stuck in my head and I couldn't forget it. It felt like I had sung the song like many, many lifetimes. So I actually want me to share a little bit of the song with you, actually, if you want.
Let's do it.
Let's see here. Oops. So can you hear that guitar okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So the song was called actually Through the Eyes of God. And in this song, I was shown how we are all connected in some aspect of oneness. I was given the visual as well as a blade of grass. I was experiencing the world, the whole world around me. So it starts off that way. I woke up from a dream. I was a blade of grass. I felt a miracle in everything that passed me. I was the scent within the breeze. I was the blue within the sky. I was the cotton candy clouds. I was everything alive. And through the eyes of God, I have learned to see that I am everything. And everything is me. And through the breath of God, I have learned to breathe. Yes, I have. And I am everything. And everything is me. Through the eyes of God. Through the eyes of God. So that's a verse from it. And like I said, many verses of the song came through. And I have to tell you that I was triggered by the words because I was brought up thinking that I was agnostic. And so when this song came in, I was like, it's a nice song, but it's not, it's not going to go on any of my albums, because I was really triggering, my experiences in traditional religion, which were not great. And so I wrestled with it, and I was doing an album at the time called The Moment. And I said, well, what if I change the words to, Through the Eyes of Love, and it was nice, but I kept coming back around, and I said, the thing with this song is it's not about what we call it. It's about what we're connecting to. So whether you call it God, whether you call it the universe, whether you call it Christ consciousness, whether you call it Buddha, it doesn't matter what you call it. It was really about the divine collaboration that I was given in this dream that I did not create. This song came from another place. And when I had that realization that it was a gift, and when you get a gift and you receive it openly, you give the gift many times over. And I just came back and danced with my own demons and called it Through the Eyes of God. And the song that I thought, wasn't going on my album ended up being, the song that most people who bought that album resonated with the most. So circling back to you, with listening to my own music, after that point, when that song came, I realized that I wasn't the only one writing my songs. So if I was in the right space and I created the right environment and the right intention, that I could connect to a field beyond myself and not only bring it into my music, but I could invite it in, not just bring it in, but I could invite it in to collaborate with me. So when I listen back to my music, sometimes I don't remember every note that I compose. It's like, oh, that's really cool. Sometimes I do, but it feels like it was a collaboration. It doesn't feel like I'm just listening to Barry Goldstein. It feels like I'm listening to that combined with something beyond myself.
I'm reminded, by the way, thank you so much for sharing that song.
You're welcome.
It's very beautiful. I always appreciate people's willingness to, do it live, 1, 2, but also share a part of who they are, without the post-production stuff. So thank you so much for sharing with me and my audience.
Unplanned, but fun, right?
It's always the best.
Yeah, exactly.
So it reminds me of a few different points. Matthew Walker, one of the professors who was really deep on sleep, he did a masterclass on masterclass.com, and he shared one of the Beatles had similar experiences where
who? I'm sorry.
One of the Beatles. I don't remember who.
Beatles. I've never heard of them.
Yeah. Right. And then it had a download overnight. You reminded him of his mother, and then he created a song. I think it's Imagine, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But anyways, he just trusted that intuition and made it into a song, and then trusted that, and then share it publicly. So I'm curious to know, from your perspective as a fellow musician, how do you trust? And as it's a weird worded question, right? How do you not let your mental mind to argue with yourself, to change the word from God to love, as an example that you gave? Like, how did you wrestle with that and ultimately decided to trust that whatever message came to you was the right message?
Well, I think,
by the way, can you give it back to me what I just asked you? Because it was a very convoluted question.
How we could trust, for instance, with that song, that I was making the right decision in moving forward and calling it that. And I think for me, knowing that I was wrestling with it so much, I knew that it was important and that it was something I needed to work on. So I had an ex-girlfriend of mine lay this rule on me that really kind of blew my mind and changed the way I think. And she called it the 5-minute rule. And she said, if you're experiencing an intense emotion and you're experiencing it for more than 5 minutes, so for instance, if you have an argument and, you were pissed off, but you're able to let it go in 5 minutes because you realize that that person was in a bad space and it wasn't you. It was just, the nature of what they were experiencing in their day. Then it wasn't your issue because you're able to release it. But if you're afterwards, you're still thinking about that, days later, it's probably triggering something in you that goes beyond that issue. And in this case, that's what it felt like to me. It felt like, wow, this is something that feels important that I work through. And I knew it was triggering, my preconceptions about organized religion, how people would view me, if I use the word God, and how I was brought up with my parents' belief around that, and how you're going to be viewed for being a religious zealot or whatever it was. And these are things that I had to kind of dance with. But that's, I think, where the trust came in, is after that contracted state that initially came in, where I knew that something was being triggered, it led to a more expansive state. When I came back to it and said, wow, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I call it, because it's about what I'm connecting to. So if it doesn't matter, then why not just call it God? Because that's how the song came in. So it's the same criteria we talked about before, which is when something feels contracted and something feels expansive. And when it feels expansive, I was in a place where the energy had passed and I knew that I could trust. I was honoring my intuition, because that's one of the ways our heart speaks to us. And that's what my book is called, The Secret Language of the Heart, because we talk to our heart and then we have the opportunity to listen to what our heart has to say back. So in that specific instance, I was talking to my heart and saying, man, there's something coming up here for me. Why am I being triggered so much by this word God? Why do I care what people think? And so the next step is, when you're having a conversation with your heart, is not to stay in your head. It's move that energy down. And what would happen if I place my hands on my heart, and what does my heart have to say back to me?
Do you mind going into the mechanics of it? Do you actually place, because some people use journaling as an example. One of my favorite tools these days, by the way, I think you'll love it too, it's called Rome Research. I use that as well. I can get into the more nuance there. But for you, mechanically, how did you have that conversation and deepen that insight?
I think for me, the first step is literally, I call it connecting with your inner symphony, placing your hands on your heart. Like right now, I can feel my own heart beating, literally.
Good.
And if you start from the premise that your heartbeat is not the same as anybody else's heartbeat on this planet, your heartbeat is unique completely to you, the exact heartbeat. The same with your breath. No one has the exact sound that how your breath sounds in your physical body as you inhale in and out. So for me, it's a starting point of speaking with my heart is listening to it. So if I listen to it, then I can speak to it, right? It's a conversation that begins. And if I close my eyes and say, man, I'm really wrestling with this situation, and I just connect with my heart and I ask my heart a question, and I just continue to breathe in and out of my heart, slow my breathing down, right, to a place where I'm more relaxed, more to a place where I'm able to listen. Now, this is called the parasympathetic state. So the sympathetic state is when we're running from the bear because we're in danger. But the parasympathetic is when our body can rest and relax because there's no longer a bear chasing us. And in many cases, the bear is our thought process, right? It's going through a situation over and over again, which creates a lot of stress in our physical body. We feel it, that contracted state when anxiety comes in. So if you can slow your breathing down and move to a more relaxed state where you're telling your body, okay, well, I don't have to run right now. I actually have a couple of minutes to just connect. And then you connect to your own heartbeat, your own breath. It's like a sacred touch. If you were to touch your lover's heart, right, she would consider that something that would be very sacred and very intimate. Now, what if you do that to yourself and you give yourself that same energy, as well? And it brings in really talking to your inner child too, and comforting that inner child. Well, don't worry, Barry, you don't have, you're not a child anymore. You're not living through your parents' lens of what they feel is, God is about anymore. This is about how you feel about God. So I'm just doing this now.
Yeah.
This is what my heart is telling me in this moment.
Mm.
That let go of it, because that's something that you inherited through your parents. That's not yours. That's not your perception. I'm talking to little Barry, where he found this concept of the name of God and organized religion. And you're not being forced, to go to Hebrew school anymore, so that you can get bar mitzvahed.
Mm.
You can connect with God or the universe, whatever you like to call it, right here, right now, in this moment, through me, your heart. And so that is the essence of the conversation that I'm having now in this moment. And similar to I had in that moment, was that, let it go, because this song was given to you as a gift.
Mm.
And the more you start to have this conversation, it sounds, it's a little awkward at first, but it's a conversation we have all the time. Why can you have a conversation with your brain?
Mm.
You listen to negative thoughts all the time, don't you? I mean, how many times have you had a situation come in and you've relived it in your head over and over?
Yeah. Rumination obsession.
Yeah. And Tony Robbins says it's like going to a bad movie and you hated the movie, but you get out of the movie and you go in line to see it again, right? Yeah. Something about us wants to relive it. And so we can have these conversations, and our conversations with our heart are a lot different than the conversations with our mind. It's not about what we think or what's in judgment. It's more about knowledge that we've acquired. It's our wisdom, things we might know already, but we haven't checked in with ourselves on. And it's not about knowledge we've obtained. It's about the wisdom of actually being able to utilize that in your life. So what I just said to you about what I told little Barry in this moment was even helpful to me now. I didn't even know I was going to have that conversation, but that's how the heart works. And if you ask it a question, you'll start to intuitively get some great answers. It doesn't have to be through journaling. It doesn't have to be formalized, but it is a great conversation starter. And music is another way, to engage your heart. So if you have a hard time just doing it in this conversation of words and with the inner symphony, listen to a piece of music that moves you. When you're feeling you want to connect with your heart. I have this beautiful song that probably I'd be surprised if a lot of your listeners have even heard of it, by an artist named Tina Malia. And it's called The Shores of Avalon. And the tagline in it is, all fears will be gone when we reach the shores of Avalon. And when I hear this song, something about it just allows me to release fears in that moment. And a lot of times I just start writing like right afterwards, because I feel like something's moved in me. And if we could release energy, why are we releasing energy? So yeah, you can release it and, oh, that feels great, but take it to the next level. I'm releasing energy. So, wow, there must be room for new energy to come in.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like,
before you talk more about the elevation, the ascension, right? The transcendence from having more spaciousness. So we'll put a pin on that real quick. Let me just do a quick recap of what you just said. What I heard is having a conversation with the heart in the beginning may feel a little awkward. Maybe there's some judgment about it or whatever. But just like learning about anything, for me, I'm a very intentional learner, right? So overcome whatever that awkwardness in the beginning, and then I can really understand what my heart is communicating to me. I could potentially use music or some prompts or some intentionality, maybe journaling as a way to ease way into it. But ultimately, it's as simple as just feel my heart and what is it actually communicating to me. And it's like a skill, like anything else. I can practice my way into more and more mastery, understanding the nuance of what my heart is communicating to me. Is that a relatively good recap? What
Yeah,
you?
that's a beautiful recap. Yeah, and you've just kind of described a process that I have in my book, and it's working with when we're working with sound and vibration, and we're working with healing. It's a 3-step process that I call IRA, so it's easy to remember, like the name IRA. So it's 3 levels. So you just described the first 2 levels perfectly. So when, like, I felt that come up for me when I was dancing with utilizing God, at that point, I identified there's a block here, correct? I identified there's something going on here. So that's your first step, is the I, is identify.
Mm-hmm.
The second step is working with releasing that energy.
Mm-hmm.
So once I had that aha moment of identifying it, I was able to say, wow, this isn't my energy. This was handed down to me. It's not even my belief system. So I was able to release it. And then the third step is the A, where now that you've released it and you have made room for new energy to come in, you can attune to higher energies, to elevate your energy. You're attuning yourself, right? Like tuning a guitar. You know, if I have old strings on it, right? It's not going to sound great. And it's, so I can identify that I have a bad string, but if I don't replace that string, right, or release that string, if I try to attune it, what's going to happen? It's not going to stay in tune, right? It's going to go out of tune because the string is bad. So it's the same thing. When we can identify it, release it, then we have the ability to now bring our energy up. And, you know, for those people watching, a great analogy of that, it's like cleaning out a closet. You know, you want to buy a new wardrobe and bring and buy all new clothes this year, but you look in your closet and it's packed. And some of that energy is things you don't need, right? Just like that block we're talking about. I don't need to be thinking that way anymore because it was something that was passed down to me. So there could be things in that closet that you now are going to want to clear out, like a bowling ball, because I haven't bowled for 20 years, you know, but I keep thinking I'm going to go back to bowling, but I want to bring a new energy. So maybe I get rid of that bowling ball and now I have room for a new pair of shoes where that bowling ball was. Now that I've released that bowling ball, there's space for something else. So it's a great thing to do, you know, is to go through your energetic closet and look at things, wow, as they come up. And you'll know, you know, things come up in your week. Use that 5-minute rule. Did it take me longer than 5 minutes to release that? What is it actually triggering in me? You know, and that is a great thing to ask. What do I think this specific situation is in relationship to that it's triggering? So for me, it went back to my parents and Hebrew school. You know, for you, if you have a fight, you know, with your girlfriend, you know, maybe it's about you couldn't release it. And maybe it's about, as a child, you know, your mom didn't listen to you and she talked over you and she didn't listen to you.
Mm.
You know, and that energy that you just had with your significant other triggered that exact same energy, even though it wasn't your mother. But when you can pinpoint that and say, wow, that's what this is about. It's not about her. It's about that energy of my mom. And you can say, wow, this is really cool. I can release that energy and not have to bring this into my present relationship. And we can even talk about this. And I can let her know when you said that, I want to let you know what was triggered in me. And now she can even be more sensitive to that and knowing that it triggers something in you. And you can bring a new energy together. Your energy in that relationship's growing.
So I have a question for you, Barry, because you're a creator, you're a creative. One of the great piece of advice that I received yesterday, actually, someone, Evan Carmichael, he's a famous YouTuber. He has 2 million subscribers and 300 million views, just ridiculous, right? And he said to me, he said, whatever you're afraid of to make, go make that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, that burns so much. So I'm curious, do you believe that? Do you agree with it? He essentially is making an art of this, the discharging process that you describe, right? He's making that. He's like, whatever that energy is, leaning to that, and then make that your art. Curious to know your thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's another level to that,
Okay,
because
sure.
yeah, I think the other level is seeing yourself on the other side of it. So, and that's a good way to tell whether it's something that you should just dive into, or not. Because if it feels good on the other side of it, and what I mean about that is, say that let's use your example of being a DJ. That I want to become a DJ, but I'm scared to do that. So should I do that just because I'm scared of it and there's a fear around it? I mean, maybe I should try it, but there's a difference between that and, venturing into that as something that is going to be successful on another whole level. So again, if you visualize yourself DJing in front of, a group of people or 1,000 or 10,000 people, does it feel expansive to you when you cross the other side of that fear? Does it feel great to you? Then yeah, totally go for it.
Well, hold on one second. Hold on one second, if you don't mind.
Yep.
But I haven't experienced DJing in front of 1,000 people. Whatever I think is a projection, right?
Yes.
So how do you then discern?
Well, how would it feel to you? Like if you could allow yourself to feel what it would be like to have 1,000 people cheering for you, and as their energy is raised from you DJing, does that feel great to you? Does it have a great charge for you? Does it something that excites you? Or when when you think about it, it doesn't have the charge that you thought. Even that 10,000 people cheering your name doesn't really have the charge that you thought it was going to. It just doesn't feel great,
So I'd have no aspiration to be a DJ. I think it would be nice. I think we'd do that, like check a list. But if I'm imagining in terms of podcast, what we're creating here has Joe Rogan sized audience, like that their life is transformed, that they have full permission to go out and live their life and then learn these intricate techniques that you have shared with us so generously, using music as a vehicle to channel their passion and curiosity and purpose. Like I just got chills thinking about that.
Yeah. And I think, I think you should have a connection to it. And you'll know if it's something that you really want to do, but you're scared of, then absolutely you should do it. Because if it's something that you want to do and something's holding you back and it's a dream that you've had, absolutely, then move through it, because it's something that is part of the gift that you're here to share. But I'll give you an example of when, to me, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do it. So I was at an event, and everybody at that event, part of that event was walking on glass. And, everyone, I would say 8 out of 10 people were walking on glass. And, I didn't feel like I was in fear of it. I just felt like I didn't want to do it because everybody else was doing it. And was there a little fear there? There might have been a little fear there, but when I really searched, it was more about, I didn't want to just do it because everybody else was doing it. And so I decided not to do it. Now, what happened was, in that moment, where I actually saw other people doing it and triumphing over it and how beautiful an experience it was for them. I then was like, you know what? Now I want to do this because now it's for the right reasons. Now it's because I'm seeing the transformational aspects of it and how beautiful an experience of it could be. But it wasn't just about the sake of doing it for doing it, and just because there was a fear around it. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It does. It does. I appreciate that. So I want to segue. I'm looking at the time. Time flies quickly over here in this conversation. I'm looking at the time. I want to honor my time and promise to you. So putting yourself back in the younger version of Barry, because as a creator, part of it requires courage, not just the intentionality, but also courage to be prominent, right? Because everyone, human beings in general, there's a fear of being judged. So how did you give yourself the permission to become prominent, to become, say, hey, look at my work, it's good, check it out? Like, how did you find that courage within you?
Yeah, well, I think that it kind of finds you, you know. So when something is just like a burning desire in you, and it's something that you're so passionate about, you don't have a choice. You can't not do it. In other words, the courage comes in, you know, that I can't say no to it, because that's how strong it is. And
so you never grapple with it. You never, have that, as Stephen Pressfield say, that resistance of like, yeah, but I don't want to do it. I'm not worthy, or whatever internal things that most people have.
The second aspect of that, the B part of that, is something that initially I wrestled with, that, okay, our definition of ego is usually thinking that, well, if I share this with the world and I come out saying, oh, you need to do this, or try this piece of music because this can help you do this, then people will think that I'm too big-headed or I'm too egotistical. And so initially, when I started sharing my music and was getting endorsements and testimonials from people, I had a nurse who was using it in Austin, Texas, and she said, I want to be able to share your music with my patients, but it doesn't even have your name on it, doesn't have a website on it. You're making it really difficult, for people to find out what you're doing. And at the same time, I was reading this book. It was a book by a guy named Michael Berg, who is a book on the Kabbalah. It was called Becoming Like God. And in this book, he had something to the essence of that ego is receiving for the self alone. So we think of ego as being too grandioso and, going out there and sharing it with everybody. But he defined it the opposite way around. That I interpret it as, if you know that you're doing something that's of benefit to other people, like it was helping this nurse with her patients manage anxiety and sleeping challenges. And I knew that, and I wasn't putting my name on things, so people couldn't find out. More people couldn't find out. And I was receiving it for myself alone. I wasn't letting other people know about it. So that's what changed it for me. CK, is if you know that your podcast is helping people and you decide you don't want to share it, or you don't want to, interview Joe Rogan or whatever it is, then that's when I'm in agreement with Evan, is that, wow, that's a fear that's holding you back because you're scared of owning who you really are, and you're going to help more people by doing it. You being on that show is going to widen your audience. And what's going to happen with that? You're going to help more people, aren't you? Right? You're going to utilize that to bring more awareness to more people. So ultimately, you're stopping yourself by not doing it, and you're stopping yourself from helping other people. And if you think of it that way, wow, I'm actually not hurting myself. I'm hurting all the people I could be helping by this. That's what shifted it for me.
I love that. So well, our time is coming to an end. Man, time flew by very quickly. Can I ask you for something for more of a personal advice?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing that I keep hearing people say, that my voice is very calming and it's very soothing, or it's very grounded. It helps them ground. So I'm thinking, like, how can I use my voice as a way to empower people to transform? So the only thing that comes to mind is, oh, I can help them sleep because I have a certain calming, energetic voice. So then their neuroses can come down. So I'm curious to know, like, how else could I use this gift to transform people's lives? Do you have anything specific?
I do, and I'm actually glad that you brought that up. It's something that I've been wanting to talk about more, and probably people on the show are saying, "Wow, they talked a lot about vibrational tools, but they didn't, they didn't talk about music as much as I thought they were going to, because vibration is all part of it, and your voice is a sound tool, that you use every day." And so you saying that your voice is calming to people, is a very important tool. And I talk about this in my book, the intention behind words and the vibration of words as well is so important now, because you can change a person's life in 3 sentences, or you can change it in one word. I can look at you, CK, and say, you know what, man, I really feel for you, man. You know what? I am sending you love right now in this moment. I'm sending you love from my heart to yours. And you can feel that I mean that, that it's authentic. And when someone does that and uses their voice and it matches the vibration of the emotion behind it, that's when you can help people transform. So it's the same thing I say with music. When I'm composing music, I might have the intention of creating a loving piece. But if I come into this studio and I'm not in a loving space and I'm angry from something that happened, it's not resonating with the intention that I wanted to create. And it's not authentic either, is it? Because it's not what I want to put out there in this piece of music. So when you're talking and you're authentic, it carries a vibration that makes you move to an expansive state. And the other way around, you can tell, can't you, when someone is full of crap, right? And they're like, "Hey, I love you, man." Right? You can tell that they really, they're not comfortable saying it. They're not be their energy was not behind the intention. They might have an intention of saying it, but they just didn't have it within them, maybe, to share that love within them with you. And it didn't feel authentic to you, in that moment. So what you're talking about that you're doing is very powerful, because people resonate with your voice because you are very authentic. And I'm sure that all your listeners will agree with that. And that's a gift and a talent, in itself, and something that you could utilize. And all of us, should be more aware and present of in every conversation that we have. There can be a level of awareness when you move authenticity into being a compassionate listener, with somebody else, and saying, I understand exactly what you're talking about. And you know what? I can feel the pain that you're going through. And I don't know exactly what to say, but I just want you to know that I'm here with you in this moment. And sometimes that's all that somebody needs, to make it through a situation, is knowing that they have someone there who's empathetic and really does authentically understand what they're going through. Or even if they don't understand, they're just there to listen to it. And that's really important.
I want to cite one thing that you said, is everything you do is sacred. Every song that you make, it's sacred. So I want to really acknowledge you, Barry, for the dance with me in the way that you show up. So my audience is all about being heart center and then bring a unique gift to the world. And we do talk about spiritual disciplines and practices as a way to free ourselves from the mental chatters, from the mindset limiting beliefs, such that we can show up authentically in the world. And one of my key focus these days is how do I deepen? How do I go deeper? How do I go inward even deeper? So I really, really appreciate the practices that you share with us, using music as a way to feel deeper, as a way to go deeper inside all of us. So just, I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here and share your wisdom with us. You, again, for those of you who is enrolled, who wants to follow up with Barry even more, he has a program with Dr. Daniel Amen. Your brain is always listening this coming week. So go to barrygoldsteinmusic.com to follow up. Anything else you want to say before we?
I just want to say I love you too. And, we've had some great conversations off camera as well. And I also want to give a shout out to Metal International, which is a amazing men's group that CK and I are both part of. That's where we met in a breakout room. And we knew there was some things to explore there. And so I'm thankful for meeting you in that room, and let me know of any way that I can be of support to you.
Awesome. Have a great rest of the day, guys. It's complete.